Today we're talking about the boss of Ford, Jim Farley. You would think he drives, obviously, a Ford pickup truck or something like that, or an SUV. He, in fact, drives a Xiaomi SU7, which is a bit of an unusual thing, isn't it? But I understand why, because I've seen them. They're really, really nice. So he's been driving it every day for the last half a year, or every day where he's been driving for half a year. That's a long time. It's gorgeous. The specs are brilliant. It's priced really, really well. Obviously, it's a big threat to Ford, and this is why he's paying a lot of attention to it. There's, a big reason for him to want to drive one. He shared that Ford purchased it, bought it for Ford, and bought it so that he could drive it around. And they bought it in China, transported it on a ship to the US, and obviously paid whatever taxes and registered it so he can drive it. He drives it around, and he actually said in an interview recently he couldn't give it up. He really likes driving it. It's really great. Which is an interesting thing. He's the boss of Ford. He gets paid, millions of dollars every year. They're making, losing lots of money to in their EV department. And to give such a compliment so openly in public about another, the competitor, the big competitors in the future, that's a really weird thing to happen. I'll talk about why they would want to buy him a Xiaomi EV from China in a minute. The Xiaomi SU7, an electric sedan, for those of you that don't know, is Xiaomi's first foray into the automotive world. They obviously make really good phones. I've used Xiaomi phones for years. They're really, really great. Way better value than Apple and other companies for a better phone for much less money. Xiaomi has been rapidly scaling up its presence in the EV world, and they've been selling tens of thousands every month of their new SU7, and they've just come out with their second vehicle. So this stands in contrast as well to Apple, who just gave in on their project for creating an electric vehicle, or a computer on wheels as some people call it. They've just sacked that off basically. According to Farley, Xiaomi's established consumer brand gives it a major advantage, potentially allowing it to outcompete many traditional car manufacturers. I would agree. I really would agree. There's one thing that we've all seen from Chinese companies. They are go-getters. They have gumption. They will get stuff done. They won't faff around for 6, 5, 10, 20 years like Honda, like Toyota. They will just get it done and nail it. They really will. They can see it. So maybe that's business wit, business acumen. They're getting stuff done. So his praise for the Xiaomi SU7 is unusual for a CEO, obviously, in this highly competitive world in the electric vehicle space. Especially considering that both Ford and Xiaomi have faced massive losses. On average, Ford lose $130,000 per vehicle that they sell that's electric, and I think it's $9,200 for Xiaomi for theirs. So they're both losing a lot of money per vehicle sold. But the idea is that there's a lot of investment from, say, Ford, for example, to buy new land, build factories, to put stuff in it. R&D, stuff like that. So it kind of makes sense that a lot of companies, even like Tesla, they lost a lot of money at first, and then you come good in the end, And if you can ride that wave, you can come good. You can land on a shore at the end. So I think that's kind of what's going on. I hope Ford make it. I would really hate to see Ford, go bust, basically, because they make decent cars. Despite these initial setbacks anyway, analysts project that Xiaomi will eventually, at the end of this year, by the end of December, start making some money in their vehicles, partially due to the expected launch of its second model, the MX-11, which is an SUV from Xiaomi. Farley's choice to drive a competitor's car and his pretty candid comments reflect his broader concerns about the rising competition from Chinese automakers. At least for the next few years, given what we just saw yesterday, I don't think he's going to have to be too concerned. But that's just the US market. That's just 300 million people. What about the global market of all the other millions of people? 720 million in Europe. So there's obviously a lot of protectionism going on, obviously. So they're trying to fend it off as much as possible. The governments in the US and Europe. He noted that, unlike the past, when American automakers were caught off guard by Japanese companies, Ford is now committed to staying competitive as Chinese brands expand globally, and they really properly are. So it's good. He's saying the right things, but is he doing the right things? Probably not. Not yet. And we will see. If they start making money, in the next 3 years, I'd say they're doing the right thing. Otherwise, they're not obviously doing the right things. As far as I can see, though, they are way less competitive. This is where you might not really like this. I'm sorry in advance. I like Ford as a brand. I like some of their cars. I like their cars in the 90s and the noughties. They're pretty nifty. I was really excited when they came out with the Focus EV, even though they priced it, it was cost prohibitive to buy one. But they're nowhere near as good as Chinese EVs. Nowhere near as good. Just go and sit in some, Even though I like the F-150 Lightning, it's just not as good as a lot of Chinese EVs, for example. I'm talking about my experience as well, my actual physical, in real life experience with, say, for example, the Ford Explorer that was at a car show recently. I remember thinking, wow, this is one of the worst cars on display here. They're not very good. It's not great. They can do, obviously they've done the standard thing that we've seen a lot of this last 10 years where they put a bit of pearl in the paint. Brilliant. But what else have you done, Ford? Not very much, clearly. They just don't look very good. The way the door shuts, the handles don't feel that great. Looking at the quality of the screw heads and some of the weird things, the backs of the bolts and underneath the bonnet, underneath the bonnet, stuff like that. Just really unimpressive. Clearly not as good as Chinese vehicles. As far as I can see, they're way less competitive. Sorry about that if you're an American, you're watching this, because I like Ford. His remarks signal Ford's recognition of the fast-paced advancements coming out of China, and it highlights the company's determination to remain competitive and to not just fall off of that cliff, like so many people are wondering what is going on with legacy automakers. Are they just going to disappear? Because if the governments don't step in and if they don't do something about their own future, it is inevitably going to happen, isn't it? So if you've got any ideas on how they could possibly stop losing so much bloody money, write it in the comments below, because I'm fascinated to know what some of you have got to say about this. They failed miserably, even though, obviously, I thought the F-150 Lightning was really, really good, because it clearly looks great, it's nice to sit in, nice to drive, really compelling, a bit too expensive though. But it clearly is, it is nice, but it's just not as nice as, say, the BYD Shark, for example, when you go and see that in person versus a Ford F-150 Lightning. It's clearly not the same sort of thing. It's really hard to reconcile, and BYD obviously nail it. So they've lost so much money on it. 130 grand per electric car sold from Ford. How can they fix that? If you've got any ideas, also put that in the comments. What I think Ford want to gain is a first-hand, very visceral experience to understand what it is that a Chinese car offers and what it doesn't offer, and that will obviously highlight how well or not so well Ford are doing. So the best thing to do in that sense is to purchase a Chinese EV and live with it for a while. It's the best thing to do so that you're not living in la la land, frankly. It's quite easy to see, though, how Ford have a way to go. So, like I said about the car show, it's just very obvious. If you disagree, that's okay, but I would encourage you to go and see them both in real life. An MG4, for example, or a BYD Dolphin, and then go sit in a Ford electric vehicle. So, yeah, I think they kind of feel a bit like the Ford Explorer. I would actually say, it's not too much of a harsh thing to say, a 2006 Ford Focus. What year was the electric Ford Focus at? The electric one. Kind of felt like one of those, but in 2024. A really crazy thing. Let me know what you think in the comments, even if you disagree. That is okay. And thank you very much for watching. I appreciate your time. And thank you for making it to the end. That's very, very nice. I make these EV news videos every day. So if you are keen to stay up to date with the latest stuff that's going on in the world, in the EV world anyway, I should say, please consider subscribing. And I know yesterday I did actually do a video talking about a hybrid car. I don't think people really want to hear about that stuff from me. Every few months I might possibly have mentioned one. Every 3, 4, 5, 6 months I might mention one briefly. But I disregard them. Obviously this channel is about electric vehicles and the news of electric vehicles, so that's what's going on. Thanks for watching.